Walking through broken doors and empty homes, I imagined children laughing, miners arguing, families dreaming. But now, silence ruled. The wind carried whispers of the past, and I realized these towns weren't empty. They were waiting, holding secrets that refused to die. What had driven everyone away? If you're loving these abandoned adventures, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe to Traveling Guide Hub for more real ghost town explorations. 1. Fairbank, Arizona. The first time I reached Fairbank, Arizona, the silence felt heavier than the desert heat. Every step on the cracked dirt roads made me feel like the town itself was watching me, even though I was alone. Broken windows reflected the harsh sunlight, and the wind whispered softly through empty homes. Fairbank wasn't always abandoned. In the late 1800s, it thrived as a bustling river town. The San Pedro River made life possible, drawing farmers, merchants, and families. Nearby mining towns relied on Fairbank for supplies, trade, and communication. Hotels once echoed with laughter. The post office buzzed with activity. Children dreamed of brighter futures in the local school. Life was hard, but hope ran deep. Some say the town's decline wasn't entirely natural. Something unexplained forced people to leave. Locals rarely speak of it. I wandered past the remains of the general store, stepping carefully over shattered glass and splintered beams. A gust of wind slammed an old wooden door open. My heart jumped. In that instant, I understood a fraction of what it must have felt like to live here. Every sound, every shadow, a possible threat in the vast emptiness. Farther down the road, the old schoolhouse loomed. Its roof partially collapsed, walls cracked, sunlight streaming through missing windows. I could almost see children sitting on worn benches, sweating in the heat, dreaming of futures they might never reach. These weren't just buildings, they were lives paused in time, hopes trapped in dust and echoes. Sitting on a fallen beam, I listened to the wind sigh through the deserted streets. No cars, no voices, only distant birds and the soft, mournful song of the desert. Leaving Fairbank meant abandoning homes, memories, even graves of loved ones. Staying meant facing isolation, scorching heat, and no future. Neither choice was easy. Then I noticed a corner of the town, untouched. Shadows moved differently there, almost as if something was waiting, just out of sight. I couldn't look away. Fairbank taught me one undeniable truth. Abandoned towns are never truly empty. They are full of stories, pain, and quiet warnings. And some secrets refuse to die, waiting for anyone brave enough to uncover them. 2 Guns, Arizona. The first time I arrived at 2 Guns, Arizona, the desert heat hit me like a wall. But it wasn't the sun that made me uneasy. It was the silence. Every step on the cracked dirt path felt watched. For a fleeting moment, something seemed to shift behind me. Old ruins lined the road. The wind whispered through them in strange, haunting tones. Somewhere in the distance, a faint metallic creak echoed, though nothing moved. 2 Guns wasn't always abandoned. In the early 1900s, it thrived as a trading post along Route 66, a stopover for travelers crossing the Arizona desert. Families, merchants, wanderers, all passed through, drawn by promises of opportunity and adventure. There was even a small zoo and a gas station that became a local hub. Life here had noise, stories, energy. But over time, tragedies and economic failure wore it down. A fire destroyed part of the zoo, mining opportunities vanished, the railroad and highways diverted travelers elsewhere. People left, leaving behind memories trapped in dust. Walking past the ruins of the old zoo, I imagined children staring at empty cages, their laughter replaced by the wind's eerie sigh. Every step heightened my awareness. I stepped over splintered wood and shattered glass. And suddenly, a shadow shifted near an old gas pump. My heart jumped. I told myself it was just the wind, yet the feeling of being watched lingered. Life here had always been a gamble. Every sound, every shadow, a possible threat. The old trading post still stood, walls cracked and paint faded. Sunlight filtered through broken windows, casting jagged shadows. I pictured the shopkeeper behind the counter, eyes squinting at the desert sun, hoping travelers would stop by. These weren't just buildings, they were lifelines in a harsh land, and the emptiness around them only made their absence louder. Further down, I discovered the ruins of a stone bridge, crumbling yet proud. It spanned a dry riverbed, and the wind whistled through its arches, carrying echoes of lives long gone. Life here had been beautiful, fleeting, fragile. I sat on a fallen stone and listened. The desert sighed, distant birds called. History whispered through every crack and shadow. Just when I thought I had explored everything, I noticed a small cave behind the ruins. Shadows shifted differently there, almost as if something waited within, just out of sight. The air felt colder, heavier. 2 guns taught me that abandoned towns are never truly empty. They are filled with whispers of lives once lived, secrets left behind, and stories waiting for the brave to uncover. And standing there, I realized some corners of the desert hold mysteries that refuse to die.
3. Ruby, Arizona. The first time I stepped into Ruby, Arizona, the desert sun was merciless, beating down on cracked streets and empty storefronts. But it wasn't the heat that made me uneasy. It was the stillness. I felt a strange shift behind me, as if the town itself was holding its breath. Broken windows reflected the sunlight, and the faint howl of wind through collapsed buildings made them seem almost alive. For a moment, I wondered if I was really alone. Ruby wasn't always so desolate. Founded in the early 1900s as a mining town, it thrived on silver and copper. Miners poured in, followed by families, shops, a hotel, and a small school. The town had energy, a pulse impossible to imagine now. Rumors spoke of rich veins underground, secret tunnels running for miles, and hidden treasures left behind when the mines closed. Over time, as the mines dried up, businesses shuttered and families moved away. Ruby's heartbeat slowed, and then stopped. Walking past the remains of the general store, I imagined miners carrying heavy sacks of silver and copper. Their voices and laughter once echoed here, now replaced by the wind's eerie sigh. I stepped over scattered stones and broken glass, and a sudden breeze rattled a metal shutter. My heart jumped. I told myself it was just the wind, yet the feeling of being watched lingered. Life in a desert mining town was always a gamble. Every day a struggle, every corner a test of survival. The old hotel stood at the center of town, its sign faded and hanging crookedly. Sunlight poured through missing windows, illuminating dust motes floating like tiny ghosts. I could almost see the guests, their boots kicking up sand, laughter and arguments filling the hallways. These buildings weren't just structures, they were the bones of a community, lifelines in the harsh desert. Further along, I found collapsed cabins, some with roofs caved in, walls leaning precariously. The wind whistled through them, carrying the faint scent of old wood and rust. I imagined a family huddled inside during a desert storm, heat unbearable outside, yet hope keeping them going. Sitting on a fallen beam, I let the silence wash over me. No birds, no cars, no voices, just the desert and the weight of history. Then I noticed a narrow shaft leading into one of the old mine tunnels. Darkness stretched inside, and the air felt colder, heavier. Shadows shifted strangely around its entrance, almost as if something waited within. I couldn't see what lay inside, but I could feel it. Hidden stories, echoes of past lives, the restless spirits of Ruby's miners. Ruby taught me that abandoned towns are never truly empty. They are full of whispers, mysteries, and memories that refuse to fade. Some corners of the desert will always guard secrets, waiting for those brave enough to uncover them.
4. Vulture City, Arizona. The first time I stepped into Vulture City, Arizona, the desert sun burned my neck. But it wasn't the heat that made my skin crawl. It was the emptiness. Every footstep on the cracked dirt streets echoed like a warning. I felt a faint shift behind me, as if the town itself was alive, watching. Rusted metal signs swayed in the wind, creaking softly. Hollow shells of buildings seemed to sigh under the relentless sun. The air smelled faintly of dust and decay. For a moment, I wondered if anyone or anything was still here. Vulture City wasn't always silent. Established in the 1860s around the Vulture Mine, it became Arizona's most productive gold mining town. Prospectors, merchants, and families flocked here, drawn by the promise of wealth. There was a hotel, general stores, a post office, even a small school. At its peak, hundreds called it home. But gold can be cruel. Mines flooded, veins dried, and life in this desert town became a gamble. Slowly, residents left, taking their belongings, leaving behind only the skeleton of a once thriving community. Walking past the remains of the general store, I imagined miners carrying sacks of gold. Their boots kicked up dust, their laughter and arguments once filling the streets. I stepped over fallen beams and shattered glass, and a sudden gust rattled a hanging metal sign. My heart jumped. I told myself it was only the wind, yet the feeling of being watched lingered. Living in Vulture City wasn't just hard work, it was constant danger, isolation, a daily test of courage. The old hotel loomed at the center of town, its wooden walls weathered and warped. Sunlight poured through broken windows, illuminating dust motes that floated like tiny ghosts. I could almost see weary travelers resting inside, the creak of floorboards beneath their feet. Every building held a story of hope, struggle, and dreams abruptly ended. The town wasn't just abandoned, it was frozen in time. Further down the street, I discovered remnants of miners' cabins. Some barely stood, others had completely collapsed. The wind whistled through the cracks, carrying the faint scent of aged wood and metal. I imagined families huddled inside during a desert storm, praying for safety, while hope flickered like a candle in the wind. Sitting on a fallen beam, I let the silence settle around me. No birds, no cars, no voices, just the desert and the echoes of history. Then I noticed a narrow, shadowed entrance to one of the old mine shafts. Darkness stretched inside, the air colder, heavier. I couldn't see what was hidden within, but I could feel it. The whispers of miners long gone, stories of fortune and loss, mysteries waiting for the curious. Vulture City taught me that abandoned towns are never truly empty. They are full of echoes, secrets, and memories refusing to fade. And standing there, I realized some corners of the desert hold stories, daring anyone brave enough to uncover them.
5. Cortland, Arizona. The first time I stepped into Cortland, Arizona, the sun was relentless, beating down on cracked streets. But it wasn't the heat that made me uneasy. It was the quiet. Every footstep echoed sharply off the empty buildings. I felt a subtle shift behind me, as if the town itself was watching. Broken windows glinted under the sun, and the faint whistle of the wind through collapsed walls carried a sound almost like whispers. For a moment, I wondered if I had stumbled into a place frozen in time,
holding secrets no one dared to disturb. Cortland wasn't always abandoned. Founded as a mining town in the early 1900s, it grew rapidly when copper and gold were discovered nearby. The town had a post office, general stores, a school, and boarding houses for miners. Families arrived hoping to build a life in the unforgiving desert. At its peak, hundreds called Cortland home. But as the mines faltered and resources dwindled, families packed up and left, one by one, until only the skeleton of a town remained. Walking along the main street, I imagined miners carrying heavy sacks of ore. Laughter and arguments once filled the air, boots kicking up dust. I stepped over fallen beams and shards of glass, and a sudden gust rattled a rusted sign. My heart jumped. I told myself it was just the wind, yet the sensation of being watched lingered. Life in a desert mining town was never easy. Every day was a struggle. Every shadow could hide danger. The old hotel stood at the center of town, its wooden frame warped and faded. Sunlight poured through missing windows, illuminating dust that floated like tiny ghosts. I could almost see weary travelers resting inside, the creak of floorboards beneath their feet. Every building whispered stories of hope, struggle, and dreams abruptly halted. Cortland wasn't just abandoned, it was frozen in time, a snapshot of a past life in the desert. Further along, I explored the miners' cabins. Some were partially standing, others had collapsed completely. The wind whistled through the gaps, carrying faint scents of aged wood and rust. I imagined families huddled together during a desert storm, fear outside, hope keeping them going inside. Sitting on a broken beam, I let the silence wash over me. No cars, no birds, no voices, just the desert and echoes of history. Then, tucked behind a partially collapsed cabin, I noticed a narrow shaft leading into an old mine. Darkness stretched inside. The air felt heavier, colder, almost alive. I couldn't see what was hidden, but I could feel it. The stories of miners, lost fortunes, and the secrets of a town abandoned too soon. Cortland taught me that abandoned towns never are truly empty. They hold whispers, memories, and hidden truths waiting for the brave to discover. Some corners of the desert will always guard their secrets, daring anyone courageous enough to explore them.
6. Swansea, Arizona. The first time I stepped into Swansea, Arizona, the desert sun was harsh. But it wasn't the heat that made my skin crawl. It was the silence. Every step I took on the cracked, sandy streets echoed loudly. I felt a sudden shift behind me, as if the town itself was alive, watching. Broken windows glinted under the sun, and the wind whispered through the collapsed buildings in strange, haunting tones. For a moment, I felt completely alone, yet as if unseen eyes were following me. Swansea wasn't always abandoned. Founded in the early 1900s, it grew around copper and gold mining. Families, miners, and traders flocked here, drawn by the promise of opportunity in the unforgiving desert. The town had a post office, general stores, boarding houses, and even a small hotel for travelers. Children played in the dusty streets, merchants shouted deals, miners carried sacks of ore with hope in their hearts. But as the mines closed and work dried up, people slowly left, leaving behind only the empty skeleton of a once thriving community. Walking along the main street, I imagined the lives of those who stayed, the laughter of children, now replaced by the faint sigh of the wind. I stepped over fallen beams and shattered glass, and a sudden gust rattled a rusted metal door. My heart skipped a beat. I told myself it was only the wind, yet the feeling of being watched lingered. Life in a desert mining town was always a gamble, and Swansea was no exception. Every day tested courage, survival, and hope. The old hotel still stood in the center of town, its walls warped and weathered.
Sunlight poured through missing windows, highlighting floating dust like tiny ghosts. I could almost picture weary travelers resting, boots scraping floorboards, whispering quietly after a long, dusty journey. These buildings weren't just structures, they were lifelines, the bones of a community that once pulsed with energy, dreams, and determination. Further down the street, I explored the miners' cabins. Some leaned precariously, others completely collapsed. The wind whistled through the cracks, carrying faint scents of aged wood and rust. I imagined families huddled inside during desert storms, praying for safety, while hope flickered faintly in their hearts. Sitting on a fallen beam, I let the silence settle around me. No birds, no cars, no voices, just the desert and echoes of the past. Then, at the edge of town, I noticed a narrow, shadowed mine entrance. Darkness stretched inside. The air felt colder, heavier. I couldn't see what lay within, but I could feel it. Hidden stories, echoes of lost lives, restless spirits of Swansea's miners. Swansea taught me that abandoned towns are never empty. They are full of whispers, memories, and secrets that refuse to fade. Some corners of the desert will always hold mysteries, daring the curious to uncover them.
7. Charleston, Arizona. The first time I set foot in Charleston, Arizona, the desert sun blazed overhead. But it wasn't the heat that made me uneasy. It was the eerie quiet. Every step on the cracked, dusty streets echoed sharply. I felt a subtle shift behind me, as if the town itself was watching. Broken windows reflected the sun's harsh glare, and the wind whispered through the empty buildings in soft, almost ghostly tones. For a moment, I questioned whether I was truly alone, or if the shadows themselves were keeping an eye on me. Charleston wasn't always abandoned. Founded in the late 1800s, it thrived as a copper mining town alongside nearby mining operations. Miners, families, and traders arrived, creating a bustling community filled with life and hope. There were schools where children laughed, general stores buzzing with merchants, and hotels where weary travelers rested. At its peak, Charleston was a hub of energy and opportunity. But as the mines dried up, accidents happened, and families sought safer lives elsewhere. The town slowly emptied, leaving only echoes of its past behind. Walking along the main road, I imagined miners carrying heavy sacks of copper, boots crunching against the dust, while children played under the scorching sun. I stepped over broken beams and shards of glass, and a sudden gust rattled an old sign. My heart jumped. I told myself it was only the wind, yet the feeling of being watched lingered. Life here was harsh and unforgiving, but its people endured with courage, leaving stories etched into every building. The old hotel still stood in the center of town, its wooden frame warped and faded. Sunlight poured through missing windows, illuminating swirling dust that hung like tiny specters. I could almost see travelers moving quietly across the creaking floors, whispering after long journeys. These buildings weren't just structures, they were lifelines, holding memories of struggle, joy, and resilience in a harsh desert. Further down, I explored the miners' cabins, many leaning or partially collapsed. The wind whistled through the cracks, carrying faint scents of rusted metal and aged wood. I pictured families huddled inside during desert storms, hoping for safety while clinging to flickers of hope. Sitting on a broken beam, I let the stillness surround me. No birds, no voices, no cars, just the desert and the weight of history. Then, at the edge of town, I noticed a narrow, shadowed mine entrance. Darkness stretched inside. The air felt colder, heavier, almost alive. I couldn't see what lay within, but I could sense it. The stories of miners, lost fortunes, and secrets of Charleston waiting to be uncovered. Charleston taught me that abandoned towns are never truly empty. They hold whispers, memories, and mysteries that refuse to fade.
Some corners of the desert will always guard their stories, daring anyone brave enough to step inside.
8. Sasco, Arizona. The first time I arrived at Sasco, Arizona, the desert sun was unforgiving, scorching the cracked streets and abandoned buildings. But it wasn't the heat that made my heart race. It was the silence. Every step I took echoed sharply, and I felt a subtle shift behind me, as if the town itself was alive, watching. Broken windows glinted in the sun, and the faint whistle of the wind through collapsed walls carried an eerie, almost melodic tune. For a moment, I wondered if I was really alone, or if the desert was hiding secrets just out of sight. Sasco wasn't always a ghost town. Founded in the early 1900s as a copper mining community, it thrived alongside nearby mines and a busy smelter. Families, miners, and merchants filled the streets, creating a lively, buzzing town in the middle of the harsh Arizona desert. There were shops, a post office, a school, even a small hotel for travelers. Life was hard, but there was hope. The town had a heartbeat. As the mines closed, the smelter failed, and accidents claimed lives, residents slowly abandoned their homes. By the 1940s, Sasco was nearly deserted, leaving behind only ruins and memories etched into the desert. Walking down the main street, I imagined miners hauling heavy sacks of copper, their boots stirring clouds of dust, while children ran between buildings laughing. I stepped over broken wood and shattered glass, and a sudden gust rattled a rusted metal sign. My heart jumped. I told myself it was only the wind, yet the sensation of being watched lingered. Living in Sasco had always been a gamble. The desert was merciless, and life could vanish in an instant. The old hotel still stood at the center of town, its frame weathered and warped by sun and wind. Sunlight poured through broken windows, illuminating dust motes that danced like tiny ghosts. I could almost see weary travelers crossing the creaking floors, whispering quietly after long journeys. Every building held stories of hope, struggle, and dreams abruptly halted. Sasco wasn't just abandoned, it was frozen in time, a testament to lives lived and lost in the unforgiving desert. Further along, I explored the miners' cabins. Some leaned precariously, others had collapsed entirely. The wind whistled through cracks in the walls, carrying the faint scent of rusted metal and old wood. I imagined families huddled together during desert storms, hoping for safety while clinging to fragile hope. Sitting on a fallen beam, I let the silence wash over me. No cars, no voices, no birds, just the desert and the echoes of history. Then, tucked behind the ruins of the smelter, I noticed a narrow, shadowed mine entrance. Darkness stretched inside, the air colder, heavier. I couldn't see what lay within, but I could feel it. The stories of miners, lost fortunes, and secrets of Sasco, waiting to be discovered. Sasco taught me that abandoned towns are never truly empty. They hold whispers, memories, and mysteries that refuse to fade. Some corners of the desert guard their stories, daring anyone brave enough to uncover them.
9. Castle Dome Landing, Arizona. The first time I set foot in Castle Dome Landing, Arizona, the sun was scorching and the desert heat pressed down like a heavy blanket. But it wasn't the temperature that made my skin crawl, it was the silence. Every step I took on the cracked, sandy streets echoed sharply, and I felt a subtle shift behind me, as if the town itself was watching. Broken windows reflected the harsh sunlight, and the wind whispered through empty buildings in soft, eerie tones. For a moment, I wondered if I was truly alone, or if the shadows around me were alive. Castle Dome Landing wasn't always a ghost town. Founded in the 1860s around the Castle Dome mine, it became a thriving mining hub in the Arizona desert. Families, miners, and merchants filled the streets, creating a bustling community despite the harsh conditions. There was a hotel, general stores, a post office, and even a small school. Children played in dusty streets while miners carried heavy sacks of ore, their boots kicking up clouds of sand. Life here was hard, but full of hope. As the mines closed and economic opportunities dried up, residents slowly abandoned their homes. By the mid-1900s, Castle Dome Landing was largely deserted, leaving behind only the skeleton of a once thriving town. Walking along the main street, I imagined the daily lives of its residents, the laughter of children now replaced by the wind's haunting sigh. I stepped over broken wood and shattered glass, and a sudden gust rattled a hanging metal sign. My heart skipped. I told myself it was just the wind, yet the feeling of being watched lingered. Life in Castle Dome Landing had always been a gamble. Every day was a test of courage and endurance, and every shadow could hide danger. The old hotel stood in the center of town, its wooden frame weathered and warped by sun and wind. Sunlight poured through broken windows, illuminating dust motes floating like tiny ghosts. I could almost see weary travelers resting inside, boots creaking across the floors, whispering after long journeys. These buildings weren't just structures, they were lifelines, holding hope, struggle, and dreams that once breathed life into the desert. Further down, I explored the miners' cabins. Some leaned precariously, others had collapsed entirely. The wind whistled through the cracks, carrying faint scents of aged wood and rusted metal. I imagined families huddled inside during desert storms, praying for safety while holding on to fragile hope. Sitting on a fallen beam, I let the silence wash over me. No cars, no voices, no birds, just the desert and echoes of the past. Then I noticed a shadowed mine entrance at the edge of town. Darkness stretched inside, and the air felt colder, heavier, almost alive. I couldn't see what lay within, but I could feel it. The stories of miners, lost fortunes, and secrets of Castle Dome Landing, waiting to be discovered. Castle Dome Landing taught me that abandoned towns are never truly empty. They hold whispers, memories, and mysteries that refuse to fade.
10. Pierce, Arizona. The first time I arrived in Pierce, Arizona, the desert sun was merciless. But it wasn't the heat that made me uneasy, it was the silence. Every step I took on the cracked, sandy streets echoed loudly, and I felt a subtle shift behind me, as if the town itself was alive, quietly observing. Broken windows reflected the harsh sunlight, and the faint whistle of the wind through collapsed buildings carried a strange, haunting melody. For a moment, I questioned whether I was truly alone, or if the shadows themselves held secrets. Pierce wasn't always deserted. Founded in the late 1800s around nearby gold and copper mines, it grew into a bustling desert town. Families, miners, and merchants filled the streets, bringing life to the unforgiving landscape. There were general stores, a post office, boarding houses, and a small hotel for travelers. Children played in dusty streets, while miners carried heavy sacks of ore, boots kicking up clouds of sand. Life was harsh, but hope pulsed through every building. Over time, as mines closed, accidents occurred, and economic opportunities vanished, residents slowly abandoned Pierce. Today, it stands as a silent reminder of the lives once lived here. Walking down the main street, I imagined the town in its prime, children's laughter now replaced by the wind's eerie sigh. I stepped over fallen beams and shards of glass, and a sudden gust rattled a rusted sign. My heart jumped. I told myself it was only the wind, yet the sensation of being watched lingered. Life in Pierce had always been a gamble, every day testing courage, endurance, and hope.
The old hotel still stood at the center of town, its wooden frame warped and faded. Sunlight poured through broken windows, illuminating dust particles floating like tiny specters. I could almost see weary travelers crossing the creaking floors, whispering quietly after a long journey. Every building held stories, not just of work, but of dreams, struggles, and resilience in a harsh desert environment. Pierce wasn't merely abandoned, it was frozen in time, a testament to lives once full of promise. Further along, I explored miners' cabins, many leaning or partially collapsed. The wind whistled through gaps in the walls, carrying faint scents of aged wood and rust. I imagined families huddled inside during desert storms, praying for safety while hope flickered like a candle in the dark. Sitting on a fallen beam, I let the silence surround me. No birds, no voices, no cars, just the desert and echoes of the past. Then I noticed a shadowed mine entrance tucked behind the remains of a building. Darkness stretched inside, and the air felt colder, heavier, almost alive. I couldn't see what lay within, but I could feel it. The whispers of miners, lost fortunes, and secrets of Pierce waiting to be uncovered. Pierce taught me that abandoned towns are never truly empty. They carry memories, mysteries, and stories that refuse to fade. Some corners of the desert always guard their secrets, daring the brave to step inside. As the sun sets over these forgotten desert towns, their silence speaks louder than words. Streets once full of life now lie empty. Homes crumble, and dreams remain suspended in the dust. Walking through them, you realize the harsh truth. Life in the desert was never easy, and even the strongest hopes can fade quickly. These towns hold the stories of ambition, struggle, and abandonment, frozen in time. Thank you for exploring this harsh, unforgiving landscape with me. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow Traveling Guide Hub for more journeys into the world's most haunting and abandoned places.